And God, I pray that as we open your word, Lord, we be challenged to a new level of obedience in our lives. God, we pray for Patrick as he brings the word. Lord, we ask and pray this in your name. Amen. You may be seated.
Good morning. How is everybody today? Good. You feel good today? Listen, for those of you who aren't feeling good today, I'm going to make it worse. All right? All right. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at your bulletin this morning, but if you did, we're going to start today's message with a riddle. My kids love riddles. So let's start. You do? Yeah. Well, some of you that can tell them, right? Okay. So what is about, on average, a little less than 4 inches long, weighs about 2.5 ounces, is somewhere between 60 and 74% water, is between 15 and 24% fat, is completely and absolutely flexible and pliable one moment, and then sharp as a razor blade the next. All right, so for those of you who are still trying to process this, let me see if I can give you a couple of ideas. Oh, honey, your Facebook picture is nothing compared to you. And I'm going to tell you, your Facebook picture made me purr. That guy, listen, that guy has a village somewhere missing their idiot. Honey, listen. You are prettier than Princess Leia, and you're smarter than Yoda. You know what? Don't worry. It's okay, because lots of people don't have any talent. It has been said of men that they have seen angels, but I have seen you, and you are enough. Did anybody ever ask you to run away as a child? When God made you, he was just showing off. Don't you just love nature? I mean, in spite of what it did to you. Okay, so what am I getting at? What's the answer to the riddle? The tongue, right? And listen, as long as that thing is wet, more than 10,000 taste buds will allow you to experience the taste sensations of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and what's the last one? Not spicy. What is it? Come on. It's savory, or the real name for savory is umami. Not yomami, umami, right? It's Japanese. It was discovered by a Japanese researcher in 1908. Now, what is the chemical that brings about this taste sensation? Anyone? No. Chinese food eaters. Chinese food. What's in Chinese food? MSG. All right, that brings out this taste sensation. If this tongue is wet, it can provide this service for you. But if it's dry, do you realize that you can't taste anything? It's completely useless. Did you know that only 85% of the population of the entire planet can do this? You know, roll your tongue like a taco. And they used to think it was genetic until they tested identical twin sets and found out that there were lots of them where only one of the twins could do it. There's no explanation as to why you can or you can't. Okay, the inverse of that. Did you realize that 58% of all the bacteria in your mouth rests on your tongue? Yeah, you better be brushing something other than those teeth, right? Okay. Did you know that your tongue is as unique to you as your fingerprints? It's true. Your tongue is as unique to you as your fingerprints or your retinas. Have you ever heard of that phrase, cat got your tongue? Do you know where it came from? About 2,500 years ago, the ancient Assyrians, when they had captured soldiers or they had criminals, they would cut off their tongue and they would feed it to the king's cat. Cat got your tongue? All right, listen. If we stop and we focus only on the seemingly innocuous, harmless data, the fun stuff, this minutia, it would be deceiving. for us to think that that's all there was to the tongue. It would be almost like convincing poor, sweet, innocent, plump, blind grandma who happens to have problems with loud noises that the best kind of pet for her would be a crocodile because it doesn't bark. Do you see what I'm saying? If we stop with the innocent data about the tongue, but we really want to find out what this thing is capable of doing. And the best place to find our data is where? The Bible. So let's go to the Bible and find out, what does the Bible have to say about our tongue? Let's look at Psalm 52:2. It says, "Thy tongue deviseth very wickedness, like a sharp razor working deceitfully." James 3:5-6 says, "Our tongues are small too, and yet they brag about big things. It only takes a spark to start a forest fire." The tongue is like a spark. It's an evil power that dirties the rest of the body and sets a person's entire life on fire with flames that come from hell itself. Now, if you're anything like me, once in a while, you've wondered, just where is hell exactly? And if you're also anything like me, you were shocked to find out with that it's a little closer than you imagined. Because evil power that sets your life on fire from hell itself, this is what the tongue can produce. If you believe anything in the Bible, if there's any, listen, lots of people like to claim verses. I claim this verse for my life. Listen, if you're claiming a verse, if you're believing anything about the Bible, you have to believe all of the Bible. So you need to understand this is the truth, that your tongue has the power to set your life and somebody else's life on fire. Look at Proverbs 18:21. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of different versions of this because I believe it's important that you don't lock onto one translation and say this is the only one that can possibly be. Listen, we have to be careful to make sure that the translations are saying the same thing, communicating the same thought. But you know what? There are just some translations that say it better than others. All right, look at the first one from the Living Bible. It says, "Those who love to talk will suffer the consequences. Men have died for saying the wrong thing." The one I like a little bit better is from the NIV. It says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." But here's the best. From the Contemporary English Version, it says, "Words can bring life or death. Talk too much, you will eat everything you say." It seems that maybe swallowing our angry words before we say them is always going to turn out to be better than having to eat them afterwards. Look at James 1:26. "If anyone considers himself religious and does not keep a tight rein on his tongue, he deceives himself, and his religion is worthless." Do you see how all-encompassing this is? Do you see how absolute this is? Well, isn't that kind of an exaggeration that everything is out if I slip? Listen, it's not an exaggeration. And I'm going to give you a little personal story to kind of prove the point. A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, all right? Listen, a long time ago, I spent a bunch of years on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. And everybody's pretty familiar with the fact that sailors are known for their colorful language. I was the poster boy for colorful language. About 6 or 8 weeks ago, our son Taj got himself in some trouble. And it was a kind of trouble that was considerably more than usual and had elevated my blood pressure to beyond boiling. And I let him have it. And after I finished my tirade to try to prove how much trouble he was in and how angry I was, my 16-year-old son just stood there looking at me. Now you figure with a teenager and aggression, there'd be some fighting back, and he just stood there and looked at me blinking. And of course, I wasn't done being mad yet. So I'm like, okay, why, you don't have anything to say for yourself? What do you want? And it wasn't in a tone of nasty, it wasn't in a tone of disrespect. He stood there with tears in his eyes. And he looked at me and he said, "What I want is a dad that's not a hypocrite. You always tell us to take responsibility for our actions." Let me tell you, at that moment, when I had lost my tongue and I let him have it with language that I shouldn't have been using, Taj didn't pay any attention to how many classes I teach or how often I might get to preach or whose life I might affect in some way. Listen, all of that went away in the blink of an eye, in the flash of my tongue, because everything else became worthless except for what I said. Because the truth is, we are what comes out of our mouths. As a result of that, I have had to make a very concerted effort to be clear, to be careful, to watch my tongue. Thank you, Taj, wherever you are. Over there, thank you. How many times, though, do we find ourselves spewing out something that we wish we could have taken back? You ever gone into the bathroom and you have your toothbrush and you squeeze out just too much toothpaste? You ever done that? All right, come on, hands. How many people try to put it back? It doesn't work, right? Listen, this brings up an old proverb that says, there are 3 things that once released can never come back. The first is an opportunity neglected. The second is an arrow that's been loosed from its bow. The third is a word spoken in haste. There was a story about an attorney who was representing his client, which was a pig farmer. He was prosecuting the transportation company that had lost 24 of this guy's pigs. And in the attorney's passion and in his effort to impress upon the jury the magnitude of this loss for his client, he addresses the jury and he says, 24, that's 24 pigs. That's twice as many as in the jury box. Oops. You see, the damage has already been done and it was all over, but the verdict. We have to be careful about the things that come out of our mouth, because whether or not that was our intention, perception is reality. Okay, let's look at the next slide. 18. Have you ever seen these before? Right, what are they called? Do you know? Right, these were originally called the Janus masks. Now, since they've been called the Greek theatrical masks, the Shakespearean masks, the happy sad masks, all right, they represent what? Comedy and tragedy. So between 600 and 200 BC, the ancient Athenians were the ones who created theater, right? They used these masks to represent a change in a mood or the change in a character. And they thought this was a great idea to begin. But once they started using the mask, they realized that there was a challenge. That now they had the mask, but they didn't have all the facial expressions. So now all the body language had to be so much more flamboyant to show what was going on underneath the mask. Now, your tongue, just like these masks, represent more than one face. Your tongue can be used to either comfort or crush. Did you realize that your tongue is the only muscle in your entire body that is not connected at both ends? Every other muscle in your body is connected at both. So your tongue is anchored at one and is flapping at the other. It's the only one that you have. Now, we can use our tongues to either crush or comfort. Let's look at Proverbs 11:9. It says, with his mouth the ungodly destroys his neighbor. Or you could comfort, Proverbs 10:21. The lips of the righteous nourish many. Will you use your tongue to crush? Psalm 52:4. You love any words that destroy, you treacherous tongue. Or you can comfort. Job 16:5. But I would strengthen and encourage you with my words of my mouth, and the consolation of my lips would soothe your suffering. Will you use your tongue to crush? Psalm 5:8-9. You do what is right, and I ask you to guide me, making your teaching clear because of my enemies. Nothing that they say is true. They just want to destroy. Their words are deceitful like a hidden pit, and their tongues are only good for telling lies. Or will you use it to comfort? Isaiah 50:4. The Lord gives me the right words to encourage the weary. Every morning he wakens me eager to learn his teaching. Just like the masks, your tongue has more than one face. You can use it to crush or comfort. You can use it to be a gossip or to be a guardian. Look at Proverbs 20:19. Stay away from gossips. They tell everything. Or you can use it to be a guardian. Proverbs 13:3 says, he who guards his lips guards his life. You could be a gossip. Psalm 101:5. Anyone who spreads gossip will be silenced. You could be a guardian. 1 Peter 3:10 says, for he who is willing to love life and to see good days, let him guard his tongue from evil. Still considering gossip? Proverbs 16:28. Gossip is no good. It causes hard feelings, and it comes between friends. Or you could be a guardian. Proverbs 5:1-2. My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. Your tongue, like the masks, represent more than one face. You can also use your tongue to breed lies or to bring life. Look at Leviticus 6:1-4. Then the Lord said to Moses, suppose one of you sins against your associate and is unfaithful to the Lord. Suppose you cheat in a deal involving a security deposit, or you steal or commit fraud. Or you find lost property and you lie about it. Or you lie while swearing to tell the truth, or you commit any other such sin. If you have sinned in these ways, you are guilty. Or you can use your tongue to bring life. Proverbs 10:11. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. You can use it to breed lies. Proverbs 12:22. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in men who are truthful. You can use it to bring life. Proverbs 14:25. A truthful witness saves lives, but a false witness is deceitful. Still think lying might be okay? Proverbs 6:16-19. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue. There's number 2. Listen to the rest of the list. Hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, and a false witness who pours out lies, and a man who stirs up dissension among brothers. Where does lying lips fall in that list? It's number 2 on the list. Of the 7 that God detests, of the 6 that he hates, number 2 on the list is lying. I don't care how innocent you think. It is never okay. Because every time you lie, you open up the door and you invite the enemy to come sit in your living room of your heart and to begin continuing making suggestions for you. You can use your tongue to bring life. Proverbs 15:4. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life, but a deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. Like the masks, your tongue has more than one face, because you can use it to offer fatal flattery, or you can be a fountain of truth. Look at Proverbs 26:28. Flattery is a form of hatred, and it wounds cruelly. Now, what do I mean by flattery? Listen, you can give good, honest, sincere, heartfelt compliments to somebody, and that's not flattery. This word in the original language of Hebrew is halak. It's H-A-L-A-Q, halak, and it specifically means the smooth, manipulative type of complimenting, halak. So flattery, halak, is dangerous. You can be a fountain of life with your tongue. Proverbs 15:1-3 says, a kind answer soothes angry feelings, but a harsh word stirs them up. Words of wisdom, they come from the wise, but fools speak foolishness. The Lord sees everything, whether good or bad. Your tongue can be used for fatal flattery. Proverbs 29:5. A man who flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. or you can be a fountain of truth. Psalm 119, 43 to 44. May I never forget your words, for they are truly my only hope. Therefore, I will keep on obeying you forever and ever, free within the limits of your laws. I will get to speak to kings about their value, and they will listen with interest and respect. A fountain of life. Or you can offer fatal flattery. Romans 16, 17, and 18. I appeal to you, brothers. Watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the doctrine that you have been taught. Avoid them. For such persons do not serve our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. And by their smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the hearts of the naive. Will you use your tongue to be a fountain of life? 16:13, Proverbs. Righteous lips are king's delight, and he loves one who speaks honestly. Now here's the last verse. Fatal flattery. Listen to this closely. Proverbs 5, 3 to 6. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as gall, sharp as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She gives no thought to the way of life. Her paths are crooked, but she knows it not. This verse is not just exclusively speaking about a physical relationship with a person. It's not just about a woman. It's not even just about a man if you're a woman and reading this verse and trying to apply it. Listen, this adulteress whose lips drip honey is anything that you have in your life that is a poor trade-off for a little pleasure. What's a poor trade-off? There was a Mississippi resident some years ago who had been arrested for felony DUI. And as he stood before the judge bangs his gavel on the thing and he says, 15 years in prison. He said, but I'm going to ask you if you're interested in a deal. He says, I'm going to offer you a stay of 14 years if you'll do 1 year house arrest. Duh. I mean, who wouldn't take that? 15 years in prison or a year locked up in the house with, Oprah and Jerry Springer, right? So he takes the deal and he goes home and he's there for about 7 months. And at about the 7-month mark, he gets bored and decides, I don't want to stay at home anymore. I want to go fishing. So he leaves and he goes fishing. And he has a great time. He goes out and he has a lot of fun and he's driving on the way home. And he gets pulled over for a broken taillight. And when they find out that he was driving with the suspended license, they arrested him. And guess where he ended up? He ended up right back in front of the same judge, who then gave him the remaining 14 years of his sentence. Poor trade-offs. Listen, I don't know what your adulteress is, whose lips drip with honey. I don't know. Is it alcohol? Is it drugs? Is it sex? Is it gossip? I don't know what yours is. But listen, any trade-off you make for a little bit of pleasure is your adulteress. And this is what breeds fatal flattery. George Morrison wrote a book called Silence is a Peacemaker. And this is what George had to say about our communication, our ability to use a tongue. He said, think of the infinite harm that could come from a malicious or even a thoughtless tongue. Think of the countless hearts that it lacerates, the fun friendships that it cools. And sometimes, you know what? It doesn't even have malice in it. Only the foolish desire to be speaking, for evil is wrought by want of thought as well as want of heart. There is no more difficult task in life than to try to repeat exactly what somebody else has already said. If you alter the playful tone, you alter everything. If you subtract a smile, you subtract the spirit. Yet how many times do we repeat things that are completely impossible, incapable of repetition, and so give pain that was unintended? You can say goodbye in such a tone that it becomes a dismissal of animosity. But yet, how seldom do we consider to think of thought, of voice, of eye, of smile, of even personality when we attempt to pass on words that we have already heard? I want to look at the next slide, which is 51, Proverbs 4:23. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Proverbs 27:19 says, as water reflects a face, so a man's heart reflects the man. Now, I don't know about you and yours, but our kids, they love Kool-Aid. I personally call it bug juice because it's really just water and sugar mixed together. If there ever was a mating call for bugs, it's Kool-Aid, right? But listen, on the days when they get to drink it, because we have to kind of, every couple of days, you jack them all up on sugar, it's not good. So every couple of days, they're allowed to have Kool-Aid. And you can see a couple of them that will try as hard as they can to fill that cup as full as is scientifically possible. Have you seen that? A cup so full that it kind of is up over the top like this, right? Listen, we're all full to the top with something. It's what comes spilling out of us when the hits of life begin to pommel you like a hailstorm. The more intense the hits, the more intense the flow. What comes out of you? What are you full of? What comes out of you when the hits begin in your life? Look at John 14, 12 to 14. It says, most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. And greater works than these he will do, because I go to my Father. And whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. Look at Hebrews 11:6. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he is, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. You get to choose. I asked the question, what comes out of you? Do you know that you get to choose the words that come out of you? Your tongue has the power of life and death. So what about these words? What about your perfect will be done in my life today, the way it's done in heaven, so that you can be glorified through the Son? What about praying that to God for somebody that you know that isn't doing that well? You know someone, they're sick. They've been injured. Maybe they're in the middle of a marriage that is completely imploding. Instead of praying for their deliverance, their healing, their immediate reconciliation, we should be on our faces in front of God saying, God, your perfect will be done in their lives so that they can become what you've designed them to be, and so that you, above all, will get the glory. I'm not trying to ask you to buy a vacuum that I don't own. I'm not trying to ask you to do something that I haven't already been challenged to do myself. Many of you know that last September, my wife sustained a traumatic brain injury that initially the doctor said she wasn't going to survive. But if she did survive it, she was probably going to be a vegetable the rest of her life. I can tell you that I know what it's like. I know what it takes to, instead of praying, God, heal my wife, to say, God, will you have your exact will be done in her life so that she becomes exactly what she's supposed to be. If you don't know this story, if you don't know how it's turned out, if you don't know the changes that have occurred in her life as a result of this event, you need to hear it. I understand she's been approached to possibly talk at the next women's conference. If you haven't heard this story, go find out who you need to talk to and make sure that she's there, because this story will change your life. Do you want to have God's perfect will in your life? Then you should be praying for others who are struggling in exactly that way, the way you want them praying for you, that the struggle will not be wasted because you got delivered too soon and didn't get what God intended for your life. Now you can say to yourself, listen, I don't really fit at either end of the spectrum. I don't pray that way, but you know what? You can't put me in this category of absolute utter destruction either. Listen, can I say to you that you're a sorry steward with the opportunity that God brings into your life to pray on behalf of the people around you that are hurting? If you're not participating like this, then you are a sorry steward who has taken that talent and that gift and you've buried it in the ground. And you will be accountable for what you don't do. Jesus made it simply and powerfully clear that we've been given this privilege to come to him and ask. That when we do, that we should believe, as it said, that he is, that he does answer, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Your tongue holds the power of life and death. And I want you to remember that the next time that you're at odds with your spouse and the words of conflict begin to fly. Will you set them on fire with the flames that come from hell itself? Or will you become a fountain of truth and of life? But you know what? You get to choose. One final thought. Proverbs 21:23. The one who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Proverbs 31:26 and 27. She opens her mouth in skillful and godly wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness, giving counsel and instruction. Listen to 27. She looks well to how things go in her household, and the bread of idleness, gossip, discontent, self-pity, she will not eat. Proverbs 31, the godly woman. Job 27, 3-4. As long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Do you see the power of resolution? It silences temptation. Those who go about their religious ways without a steadfast tongue stand like a door wide open that just invites a beating. But resolution shuts and bolts the door. It resists the enemy and forces him to run. You choose the words that come out of your mouth. There was a peasant who had a troubled conscience, and he went and he talked to a monk for advice. Apparently, this peasant had helped perpetuate this vile, nasty rumor about a friend of his, and then he found out that it actually wasn't true. And the monk says, if you want to ease your troubled conscience, what you need to do is you need to get a big bag of chicken feathers. And he says, I want you to walk around to every house in the village, and I want you to place at the doorstep of everyone a fluffy feather. Peasant's like, cool, I can do that. So he gets a bag and he runs around to all the houses and he puts a feather on the doorstep of every house in the entire village. And he walks in and he announces to the monk, he says, I've done my penance. Not yet, the monk said. He says, if you really want to finish this correctly, if you want to be purged of this pain in your conscience, he goes, you need to now take your bag and walk back around to each and every doorstep where you placed a feather and pick up every single one of them. And the peasant said, that's impossible. The wind will have blown him away. Listen, words are easily dropped. But no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you wish, you will not be able to get them back. I want to invite you, if you have something going on in your life and you need prayer, at the back, we have a curtained area, and there'll be people back there to pray with you. If you're struggling with something, if you need some help, if you just need some encouragement, if you are ready to turn over and say, you know what, no longer am I going to use my lips or my tongue to crush, but I will comfort. No longer will I gossip, but I will become a guardian. I will not breed lies, but I will use them to bring life. I will not flatter, but I will be a fountain of life. If you're ready to make a commitment to change this, we want to help you. We invite you, as they continue to worship, I want you to come back and allow us the privilege to pray with you.